Okay. Okay, it's already 6:03 p.m. So we're going to start with our second web conference for the course of International Negotiations Strategies. My name is Angela Piedad Suarez Torres. I come from Duitama in Boyacá. I belong to the SEAD Boyacá, Centro Zona Boyacá, and today is the 25th of October, 2024. I'm not sure if you were in the first web conference, so I'm going to present myself. I'm the course director. The course is very small. We're only 58 students, so there is just one director and no tutors for this course. I'm professional on international relations from the Universidad del Rosario in Bogotá and specialized on European studies from the same university. I have a master's degree on international politics from Newcastle University from the United Kingdom. Our class plan for today, first, our presentation. I already did it. And we're going to talk about the main subject of the web conference is going to be intercultural negotiation. We're going to talk about the key components of intercultural negotiation, the practical strategies for successful negotiation, the challenges in intercultural negotiation, and we're going to talk about some examples. At the end, if you have any questions, I'm going to answer, or the feedback is going to be available. First of all, intercultural negotiation involves discussions and decision making between parties from different cultural backgrounds incorporating diverse norms and values. So it's very important when we talk about international business and the negotiations strategies to care about the intercultural subject because it is very important. It's a very important element that sometimes defines the successful or the failure of our process of negotiation or our negotiation strategy. So intercultural subject is very important to know, to read, to learn about it, to know about the differences in cultures when we're talking about international business, the different cultural backgrounds of the people and the negotiation parts, and how the norms and values of these backgrounds are going to impact on the process of negotiation. So it is very important. This program of international business at UNAD is focused on the intercultural subject because it's one of the main elements to be considered in the process of negotiation in an international environment. Understanding the cultural differences is crucial in international business to avoid misunderstandings and achieve successful outcomes. So, this is an element that we have to consider always because maybe we have a very organized plan, well thinked plan of business plan, but if we don't know how to explain, if we don't know how to negotiate, if we don't know how to get the attention of the other part regarding the cultural implications, it's going to be a failure, our process of negotiation. So the culture and the differences between cultures are very remarkable in the topic of international business. Anderson, if there is something that you don't understand, if you have doubts, you can ask or you can write on the chat, okay?
Okay.
There are some key components of the intercultural negotiation. We have three in this case that we're going to look at. The first one is the cultural awareness, which means that we have to recognize and respect the cultural differences in values and beliefs and practices. So this is something that we have to learn about the other cultures First of all, we have to know how the culture behaves, uh, what's the type of beliefs that they have, for example, the religion, how important is the religion in their lives, the values in the society. And when we talk about practices, it's more like the behavior of the customer. How do they behave? What type of how do they behave in the market? For example, if we're offering um, a good or a service, a product, we need to look at the market and how the people behaves in that market as customers. So it is very important for us to learn a lot about these cultural differences from the culture where we're going to deal with our business. Another component that is very, very important regards the effective communication. Utilize active listening and adapt communication styles to fit cultural norms. Sometimes we may have a good idea, we have clear the idea for ourselves, but sometimes we have problems to express our ideas, even in our own language. So, if we want to communicate, if we want to negotiate with someone from another culture, after looking about the culture, the beliefs, the values, the practices, we need to be aware of how are we going to communicate. How important for them is the different types of communication that we're going to have. Why? Because sometimes we are very active with our hands, we may move our body, and those are very important for some cultures and for some others are not very comfortable. So we have to learn how are we going to have an effective communication, how are we going to get the message clear to our customers, to the possible customers that we're going to have. So we need to design uh, the way how are we going to communicate to be clear and to get the message well to the people, so make us understand by the others. It is very important to consider the effective communication. As I was saying, sometimes we are well prepared, we have all the information, we have clear our idea of business, we know perfectly our product, but we may have problems with communication. So it is very important to know how to communicate, how to explain, and how to get the message right to the person that is listening to us. And the next one is the emotional intelligence. The emotional intelligence is about develop empathy and self-awareness to navigate cultural dynamics effectively. So this is also regarding how we're going to have this effective communication. The emotional intelligence means that how are we going to be able to get the message to the person that is listening to us, that that we're going to catch their attention, that they're going to be interested on what we're doing, when we're saying, what we're explaining. So to develop this relationship, this harmony in the conversation, it is going to be very important. If we are talking maybe in a way that nobody is interested, we're failing in something. We're failing in the way we're trying to communicate. Even sometimes, if we have troubles with the language, we need to find a way to catch their attention. So we need to design those strategies. The idea when we go through a negotiation strategy, a negotiation process in an international environment, we must be aware about so many things that are involved in this process, and it's not just about talking about business and the deal that we want to get, But it is important also to be aware of how are we going to get this connection, to get this empathy, to have the harmony in the conversation, in the exchange of information. So it is really, really important for us to have all the information and to know how to behave with the other part. What is important for them? What's the type of environment that is going to be suitable for that type of meetings? It depends on the culture. Some people want to meet at the beginning, maybe in a restaurant, to get a strong relationship first. Some others, they just go to the point of the business. So maybe we have to meet in a conference room or in an office. So we have to consider so many elements that are very important to get this process of negotiation and to get a good communication with the other part. And the main thing is to respect who they are, how they think, the values that they have, the practices that they have. And we need to get that part first. After, to get a very effective communication, to be able to explain and to give them the message as we want. And of course, to use our emotions to create a harmony in the process of this negotiation. So it is very important to consider those elements if we really are looking for a success on this international negotiation. I am going to show some elements um, of the intercultural matter that we have to look at, because sometimes we think that we're doing the things right and maybe we're getting wrong. So we're doing things that are not right, so we are confused about how are we going to explain and how are we going to get the attention of the people. And maybe we're thinking that we know everything about the language and that our message is going to be understood, but at the end we're getting some troubles in the process. With I have one example for in this case about the language. Is in the case of China. The language is an expression of culture, and mistakes using the slang and dialects are always possible. Sometimes we think that just using a translator, we're going to get the idea. That's one of the things that I explain to all my students where we're, for example, learning a new language. In the case of English, sometimes people, when they're learning a language, they're always translating literally the word. Sometimes if you have some doubts about the meaning of a word, you just go to the dictionary that goes, for example, Spanish, English, English, Spanish, and then you just translate. Or sometimes you just go to Google Translate and you got the literal translation. But the thing is that sometimes one word has different meanings. And how you use the word in the sentence is going to make a difference. And maybe even in Spanish, when we talk with people from different Latin countries, we have a word that has a meaning. But if you go with that word to another country like Chile or Argentina, they may understand something completely different. And sometimes it's not very grateful. So in the case of China, the jingle of Pepsi was saying Pepsi comes alive. Well, if you look at that in Spanish, como Pepsi te trae a la vida, it means like, wow, that's really good, that gives you life. The problem in China was that how it was translated, it meant that brings your ancestors from the burial place. So this was insulting in a country where the ancestors are often worshipped. So, in the case of the Eastern countries like China, Japan, Korea, and the other Eastern countries, um, the respect for the ancestors is really strong. is something that you cannot touch. It's it's very intimate, and it's something that you always have to respect. For a Western culture, the jingle doesn't have any trouble, and it gives you more an idea of more energy, or revive you, or wow, something good. But in the case of the Eastern countries, it means something different and is not good for the people. It's an insult. So as we can see, it's just the translation of a very short sentence and in a jingle, and they of course they had to change it to get the right idea in a new one. So those are the elements that we may have to consider when we're thinking about the international process of negotiation. Because sometimes we just try to learn the language because we need to explain ourselves and to get a conversation. But the thing is that we really need to have um, uh, some skills to communicate, to be able to communicate and to explain ourselves without any trouble. So, one of the elements that we have to consider in the intercultural negotiation is uh, is the knowledge of the language. To know the language and to understand the language is going to be very important. Sometimes when you go to a different country where English is not the easiest way to communicate, you may have to find a translator to get the communication fluent. But the thing is that it is not possible for people just to trust 100% on a translator. So it is very important to get someone from our own team that has at least some knowledge of the language. Maybe the person is not don't feel comfortable doing the whole conversation because maybe doesn't have a very fluent language. But the thing is that we need someone who at least understands what the other part is saying, and to be sure that the translator is translating what we really need. Because at the end, you cannot trust in someone that maybe you don't know really. And in a matter that is so important as important international negotiation, you cannot trust in someone. For example, if you get to China and you just pay a Chinese translator, it's not sure for you that the person is going to translate everything as you really need, or maybe that the person is really understanding what you want to say. So it is very important to have someone at least who understands what the translator is doing. So can say like, yes, he's translating everything and the ideas are right, or no, he's just changing the ideas, or he's not getting the idea. So it is very important to have management of the language, to know something about the language and to be able to communicate with the other part in their own language. It is really, really important, and it's a way of saying that, of course, you respect them, and that at least you took some time to learn some things of their language. That makes the people feel comfortable also. So most of the times what we learn is English, and we think that with English we're going to go anywhere in the world and everybody's going to understand. But sometimes, for example, if we talk about French people, if you meet a French person, you're not going to talk to the person in English at the first moment, because the French, they are not very comfortable with English. And it is worse if you're a foreign person and try to communicate with them in English. It's better for you to try to say some French words and maybe to explain yourself in Spanish, but never, never to start a conversation in English, because sometimes most of the French people are going to feel it like an insult because they have a deal with England, and for them, well, France and French are very important, and it's not possible to feel like the English language is better than French. So that's something that you have to learn about the people and how the language is important for them and the identity that they have of the culture. Is not only to know maybe just the language and to know about the negotiation process with them, but also to know a little bit of the culture, the behavior, what they like, what they want to talk about if you're just having or sharing a cup of coffee, or if you're just starting a meeting, maybe sometimes you have to like break the ice, talking about something different from business. So it is very important to know a lot of things and to be more sensitive about the other cultures if we want to be successful in this process of international negotiation. Now I'm going to show you some of the subjects that are very interesting to analyze from the other cultures. For example, I'm going to show you some images with information about the differences between some cultures. What is important for some cultures about, for example, in this first one is talking about the power distance. What means the power distance? It's like when the companies are very like bureaucratic, or where the organization is like very plain. Power distance is low in countries like Austria, Israel, Denmark, New Zealand, and Ireland. What's the meaning of that? In those countries, there is less centralization. The organization, the pyramid is very flat. There is a few supervisory personnel. When the organization is flat, it means that you don't have the boss of the boss of the boss, but the people, they try to have like the same level, but with different responsibilities, and you have to answer for the job that you are contracted to do. But you don't have to worry like about I have a boss and this one has another boss, and what the boss says is what I have to do. No, it's just like more responsibility for every person. In this type of organizations, the difference between wages is smaller because everybody has responsibilities, and it is not important if you get more money, because the idea is that everybody is working for the same idea. So everybody is contributing. So there is no many differences between the wages in employees, and the structure in which manual and clerical work are equally valued. So there is more a relation of equals, and not that because you're my boss, you're the one who says what do I have to do. So in those countries, think about less centralization. What is possible with them? That they're not going to send the owner of the company or the CEO of the company, but maybe with the person that you're going to talk in the process of negotiation has the power to decide. So that's the meaning of it. In the case of another countries where the power distance is high, like Malaysia, Guatemala, Panama, Philippines, and Mexico, those are great at central. There is a centralization in the organizations. The pyramids are tall. It means that we have many bosses. There is more supervisory personnel. There is a large wage differentials, and the structure in which white-collar jobs are valued more than blue-collar jobs. It means that if from those countries you have a team of negotiation, you have to look at which level they have in the pyramid. So if they are in the base of the pyramid or if they're going higher in the pyramid. It depends on that. How are you going to manage the situation? Because in those types of organizations, you need to talk to someone in a high level of the pyramid. If you go to talk to the base of the pyramid, there is no way they're going to take any decision or to have any clear idea of the future of the negotiation. But if you have the chance to talk to someone in a higher level is going to be someone who has more power of decision. So, for example, power distance to consider um, in the cultural differences is very important for someone in a negotiation team to know how much power has the person that is dealing with you in the process of negotiation. So that's very important to know about the culture and the characteristics of the country where you're going to negotiate. The next one talks about uncertainty avoidance. In the case of the low uncertainty avoidance, countries like Singapore, Jamaica, Denmark, Hong Kong, and Sweden, there is less structuring of activities, fewer written rules, more generalists, there is variability, greater willingness to take a risk, and less ritualistic behavior. So the people is going to be more clear. The rules are going to be very simple. The communication is going to be more fluent. Um, so it's going to be an easier way of the negotiation. And of course, they're going to analyze the possibilities of of the negotiation, but if they have to take a risk, they're not going to be stopped by that. They have to analyze, but of course, if they see there is a way that the deal might be done, it's going to be it's going to have like a good process of the negotiation. In the case of this high uncertainty avoidance, where the people doesn't want to have like um, to risk a lot, are countries like Greece, Portugal, Guatemala, Uruguay, and Belgium. Why? Because there is more structuring of activities. They have more written rules, so they have to look at the different rules that they have, and some of them may go and stop the process. There are more specialists. There's a standardization. There is less willingness to take a risk and more ritualistic behavior. So usually, maybe in those countries, they're going to have a taller pyramid, and they're going to have like a whole process to follow the negotiation, and you're going to be aware that they're not going to be, they don't want to take some risks, and they want the things like more clearly, and they want to know that if they're going to make the deal is going to be successful, they don't want to take some risks. So this is the subject about uncertainty avoidance depending on the culture of the countries. Another element, individualism versus collectivism. When we talk about some peoples where this element is low and where the element is high. For example, countries like Guatemala, Ecuador, Panama, Venezuela, and Colombia, the organization is seen as a family. You belong to this family. The organization defends employees, the employee interests, and the practices are based on loyalty, sense of duty, and group participation. In the case of United States, Australia, Great Britain, Canada, and the Netherlands, the organization is more impersonal. The employees defend their own self-interest, and the practice encourage individual initiative. What's the meaning of this? That when you're in a process of negotiation with the law, individualism versus collectivism, um, there is a sense of duty of the persons, of the employees, and also there is a group participation. It depends, the decisions are taken by this group, and you have to consider the different positions of the people, because all of them, they share like the same values of the from the company, because they belong to a company that it's considered like a family. And of course, they're going to defend the interest of the employees, but the main character is that the loyalty that they must have for the company. In the other side, we can see organizations that are considering and encouraging the individual initiative. So, in this case, if you have an idea, if you can see that the process of negotiation, if you're a negotiator and you see that maybe there is a way to deal with it and you have an idea, the others are going to hear you and to consider you and to value that initiative that you have as an individual and consider it for the process, which is going to be different from the other type of countries. Um, These elements, for example, masculinity versus femininity, is very important depending on the culture. If you're going to deal with some cultures, you really have to know what's the role of women and how important is the are men in the culture, because that means that you're going to have an idea of what type of meeting are you going to have. If you're going to meet a group of people which it's equally organized by women and men, or if you're going just to find men. In this, the masculinity versus femininity, the law is countries like Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Denmark, and the ex-Yugoslavia. The sex roles are minimized. The organizations do not interfere with people's private lives. More women in more qualified jobs. Soft, intuitive skills are rewarded, and social rewards are valued. In this case, all the people are considered all the same. So you can deal, maybe you're going to negotiate with a woman or with women or with men. So there is not going to be a differentiation about it. So, and the importance in this case is just what the people is thinking, considering, analyzing, just what you give for your team as a team member. So they don't look for you're a woman, you're a man, or what you're saying is not valuable. No, it is very considered like equal opportunities for women and men in these type of countries. If you go to countries like Japan, Austria, Venezuela, Italy, and Switzerland, sex roles are clearly differentiated. The organizations may interfere to protect their interests. So, for example, in the case of these countries, um, if someone has problems in its private life, it may affect the job, uh, their job. So it is the environment of the employee. So it is very important to consider all those differences. Fewer women are in qualified jobs. So you're not going to find many women as in the other type of countries. Aggression, competition, and justice are reward, and work is valued as a central life interests. So it is important to deal with these differences because you have an idea of what type of negotiator are you going to find and how are you considered as a part of this negotiation. This is very important, the long-term orientation, because sometimes you have an idea of your business and you're thinking that you're going to be in this process, but you need to seal the deal, for example, in a specific time. If you go to countries like Pakistan, Philippines, Spain, Canada, and Great Britain, they are considered shorter planning horizon and a smaller number of M&As. So, what's the meaning of this? That if you go to a negotiation with them, it is probable for you that you're going to get a deal in some time very close. It's not going to take very long. But if you go to negotiate with China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea, they have a longer planning horizon and a higher number of MNEs. What's the meaning of that? That in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea, they just need to make a deal with someone, to make a business deal, they are going to take the time that they want and that they consider that is suitable. So if you are in a hurry, don't expect to have many results from the first meeting with someone from those countries from the eastern part of the world because they just go slow. In China, there is an expression, a word that is very important in the process of negotiation, not just international negotiation, but negotiation in China, which is Wanchi. I always talk about Wanchi because sometimes we think that we just read those on the documents, on the readings that we have for university, but that's not real. But I can assure you that it is real. It is real, the Guanchi, to establish a relationship first to be able to consider business after. So they have long-term organization, yes. They don't want to seal deals just immediately when they meet you. No, it's not the way how they work. So they're going to take time. They're going to have different meetings, conversations. They need to know you to establish a real relationship, to know who you are, if you're married, if you're single, if you have children, what's the type of food that you like. Mostly in those with those people, you're going to meet in a restaurant, you're going to share the food, and you're going to know more about their lives before talking about business. So it is very important those elements to consider because those are going to prepare you to go through a successful process of negotiation and to design, of course, a negotiation strategy that is going to be suitable with that team of negotiators and that is going to build a good process of negotiation for a successful business. It is very important to consider those differences. So in intercultural negotiation, it is very important to consider the dimensions of cultures, which regards so many different elements from the cultures and the countries. So I have some some maps and flags, countries and elements to be considered in the culture. We have four different countries with four different cultures. China, which comes from the east, it's a communist country with a capitalist economy. Colombia, which is a Latin country. Germany, a European country, but very strict with the process of negotiation. And Saudi Arabia, which comes from the Arab world. Um, with potential for business, but of course with a culture very related with the religion. So those are four examples of four different countries all over the world that if you want to consider negotiations with three of them, you're going to learn a lot about the culture and how is going to be that process of negotiation. It is very, very different to negotiate with an Arab from Saudi Arabia, from someone from Germany and someone from China. They are completely different. The sense of power is different. The consideration of gender is completely different. As you know, in the case of Saudi Arabia, the religion imposes over politics and economy, really. And the role of women is very different from Western countries. So the role of women in process of negotiation, I don't think that they are able to be in those processes because it's just suitable for men. And of course, you're going to have, if for example, in the process, in the negotiation team, you have women, it's going to be very difficult to go through a negotiation with Saudi Arabia. So you have to consider all those elements. If you go to negotiate with Germany, it's going to be completely different because, of course, they don't have that differences between genders. So it's going to be, if the person is smart, it doesn't matter if it's a man or if it's a woman. The importance of the person is what do they have in their brains and what they do in their job and how do they manage their responsibilities. In the case of China, of course, there is a difference also. It might be in between Saudi Arabia and Germany. It's not going to be as extreme as Saudi Arabia, but it's not going to be so liberated like Germany. Traditions are completely different in those four countries. I'm just having the idea of just those four countries that come from different areas of the world. But from them, you're going to have different traditions in every country. Even if you go to Europe, you cannot consider that Germans have the same traditions that people from Sweden, from France, from Austria, from Italy, from Greece, because they all are so different. Even if they're neighbors and they're small countries, really, each of them has their own culture, their own language, their own traditions, and their own way of living. So it's very different. So we have to consider how different are all countries all over the world. Even if you are neighbors, even if we Colombians are neighbors with Panama, with Venezuela, with Ecuador, we have so many differences. Even between, even in the country, we are so different. So consider that we have much difference, much bigger difference with our neighbors and much bigger differences with the other countries that are from different regions of the world. The relationships and how you manage relationships and how important that are relationships in business, it's completely different in every culture. How it's important in Colombia, how it's important in China, if it's important in Germany, how it works in Saudi Arabia, how it works somewhere else. So how important is the building of a relationship to get a process of negotiation in an international arena? It's so different in every country. Uncertainty, as I was saying before, some people, some countries, people used to take some risks. Some other people, they just want to go for sure and not having any risks. Of food, how important you see, but please, what do we have to deal with food here in international negotiation? For example, for Eastern countries like China, Japan, Korea, um, the process of knowledge and building that relationship between those different parts of negotiation, they're going to deal at the beginning in a dinner, in a meeting in a restaurant, sharing some food. So for some cultures, food is very important, and to share food, it's a very important step to build a relationship. Just first, a relationship, maybe looking for a friendship, and after considering a business. So it is very important to see how different is this consideration for each culture. Religion is very important to consider because in countries like Saudi Arabia, religion is very related or designs or decides how the rules are designed and how the people behave. So if you don't know anything about the religion, you're not going to understand how the people behaves. So it is very important in some countries where religion and politics are always together and where religion is very important. If you look at Colombia, which has a differentiation, a separation, a division between religion and politics, even though Colombians, we are very religious. Um, Most of the Colombians, we believe in the Catholic Church, and sometimes are those elements are important to consider when you're going for a process of negotiation. Maybe you're a believer and then you go to meet someone who doesn't believe in anything. So it is very important to know how the people, the other country behaves about religion, how important is religion, or if they really don't have any matter about that. Sense of time, this is very important, the sense of time, because for some people there is difference. The sense of time in a case where how important is to be punctual and how important is to arrive at the meeting before, or if there is no problem to be late. It depends on the culture, how they manage the time. But also sense of time is how the people consider important to get the business done at the beginning of the negotiation or just with a meeting, or if the people they really need more knowledge and more time and they don't care if the process of negotiation is going to take 1, 2, or 3 years. So it is very important to consider that element. And the difference between individualism versus collectivism. How important is the teamwork, or how important or how relevant is the individualistic development of the person, and how important are the influence of the process of negotiation just for one person. So those elements are very, very important. Um, I was thinking an example of the sense of time. Mm, I just forgot. Well, if I remember, I will share it with you. So those are the dimensions of culture that we have to consider in a process of negotiation, in a negotiation strategy for international business. Well, now we're going to continue with some practical strategies for successful negotiation, considering, of course, the intercultural element. First of all, we have the research of cultural norms. Prior to negotiation, what I was saying, we need to learn about the other parties' culture, including communication styles and business etiquette. Well, about business etiquette, it's very important how you have to get dressed and the time, if you have to be on time, or if you have to arrive earlier, or if you can be on time and maybe the other part is going to be late and you're not going to make a deal of that. So that's very important to be considered. So, and that's prior to negotiation. If we're going to design a negotiation strategy, we need to know that before designing the strategy. We cannot design a strategy and then to think about the cultural norms of the country where we're going. So it is very important to know everything that we can get from the other culture, and to know how to behave, how to communicate with them. The next one is to build trust and relationships, to establish rapport through personal interactions, which can facilitate smoother negotiation. As I was saying, for some cultures, to establish these interactions and these relationships are more important, and for others, it's not that important. Embrace flexibility. Be open to adapt your negotiation style based on the cultural context. You cannot consider that because you are very strict and because you respect all the time of the people, and then the others have to do the same. No, you need to learn about how do they behave, and then to understand and be flexible, because in a process of negotiation, you always need to be flexible. Now I remember the case that I wanted to share with you about the sense of time. There is a case of a small business here in Colombia. There was a woman who was building some small dolls in the skin of the orange. So her business was just those dolls made from the skin of the orange, very nice. So the Colombian German Chamber of Commerce, they had the opportunity to bring some small business to an international fair in Germany, an international fair that is just for decoration and that kind of accessories. It's one of the most important fairs in the world. So this woman had the chance to share a stand in that fair uh, with the help of the Chamber of Commerce, the Colombian German Chamber of Commerce. So the woman said, okay, they're going to help me, so I have this chance. So I'm going to show my products, my dolls in that fair. So the first year she went there, and everybody was like, "Oh, those dolls are very nice, so weird. Ah, it's the skin of the orange." It was innovative. It was really nice, and that was it. She didn't sell anything, and the people was looking around, and they found very nice the business that she had. Well, that was the first year. The next fair, she had the same chance. She went again, the people again, oh, it's so beautiful, so different. Oh, it's very nice, very well done. And there was one man that he was every fair going to check and look to the product of the woman, how the dolls were done, the quality, what, everything. She continued to go to the fair like for 3, 4, 5 years, always did with the same result. The same people going, looking, admiring, but no selling. By the fourth year, the same man came again to the stand and looked at the dolls, and he said like, I like your product and I would like to make a business with you. And I've considered this because I've seen that every fair you come. So that gives me some certainty that you're a serious person and that you really want to do and continue, and that you are a responsible one, that I think that I can make business with you. What's this the sense of time? I mean, not because you go to the first fair, you need to be successful and sell everything or get business done. No, you need to continue. You need to to show responsibility, to show continuity, to show how serious you are, and that gives some trust to the other people, and that gives trust to consider to make to relate in a business relationship. So this is very important because sometimes if we go to a fair and we don't sell anything, we're just very sad and we think, no, I just failed. No, maybe we have to build that image. We have to show that we continue in the job, that we continue in the business, and that we really want to get a share of the market. So that's very important to consider because sometimes we just try once and we say, no, I failed, so I stop here and I'm going to change. So we have to be a little more responsible and to continue and to give us the chance to be successful, but with the time, not just from one day to another. So that's very important, and I wanted to share that example with you today. Well, I have some another examples of intercultural negotiations where there are some elements that we have to consider. In the first case is Nestlé in China. Nestlé in China talks about the initial approach focused on a direct negotiation style due to lack of relationship building. Shifted the strategy to prioritize guanxi relationship, leading to a successful partnership. What's the meaning of this? How important is guanxi? Guanxi, which means relationship, building relationship with the other. So the guanxi is really, really important. When I was studying in the UK, I share a flat with four Chinese people, four Chinese students, and one of them was sharing with me how important guanxi was really for the Chinese culture and the Chinese business culture. And he was telling me like, look, if I want to make business with someone, I need to build a relationship. We need to be friends. We need to know each other. We need to build the guanxi. Once we get real guanxi, we can consider doing business. Another way is that you may know someone that it's going to recommend you, and that helps to build a guanxi a little bit faster. But for the Chinese, the guanxi is the base of the business. If you don't have, if you don't build any relationship with another business partner, you're not going to be successful building business in China. So the most important to build a business in China is the guanxi. And for the guanxi is this, to go to a restaurant, to meet the other, to know something about the other person, to know, as I was saying, if you're single, if you're married, you have family, if you have children, if your children go to the school, and what type of a school, that kind of information is very important to build the guanxi. For us, it's like not very important, but for them, for the culture, that's really, really important. That's the case of Nestle in China, and Nestle, it's an international firm. It's known everywhere, but you need to build one chip. Even if you're Coca-Cola, if you're Nestle, if you're Airbus, you need to build one chip. And the second case is the US versus Japan negotiations. American negotiators often emphasize directness, while Japanese counterparts value harmony and consensus. So the sense of time, the sense of how important is to deal with something immediately, how to be direct. And for the Chinese is how to build a consensus, to make a real negotiation and to have harmony in the process. Successful outcomes require understanding these differences and adjusting approaches accordingly. If we don't understand how the other behavior, for example, if the Americans don't understand how for Chinese is important the harmony and the consensus, it's going to be very difficult to build a relationship and to build and to get business done between those parts. So those are some examples of how important the culture and the intercultural differences are considered in the process of international negotiation. What type of challenges in intercultural negotiation are we going to find? The language barriers are not, and the nonverbal miscommunication can complicate negotiation. I mean, um, it is important to know the language, not only to speak English. If we're going to talk about, if we're going to work on international business and intercultural negotiation, we need to learn more languages. English is the basic one because everybody speaks English, but sometimes you need to know the other language to build those relationships. And the nonverbal miscommunication, because the only way that we communicate with the other people is not just only with the language, with our body, with our expressions. We need to consider those also an element very important in the process of communication. If we're saying something, but our face and our body says something different, we're not going to get the link with with the other part. They're not going to get the main idea that we have. So it is very, very important to manage the language, but also the non-verbal language that we use. It's very important. The other challenge, the stereotypes may lead to misunderstanding. Negotiators should approach each situation with an open mind, to be flexible, to have an open mind, and never trust to stereotypes. So that's a mistake that we can have. I know because they say that Americans are like this or Germans are like that. No, you really need to know and to learn about the culture and how do they behave, not to be ruled by stereotypes of the people. It is very important, and those are real challenges that we really have. Well, do you have any questions? Did you understand what I was saying and trying to explain to you? Good night, Marisol. Okay, Anderson, that's the most important. If you understand what I was saying, what I was explaining, I'm going to share with you the recording of the web conference. And of course, we have only the transcripts that is going to help you to understand maybe what I was saying if you don't have the the high level of the maybe if it wasn't clear in the language that I was explaining everything. Um, okay, perfect. I think that I've answered most of the doubts that all of you had on the guide and the activity. Uh, it took me some time to deal with the simulator, but I see that most of you have already got the credentials to have access. And I'm going to organize a CPAS maybe for next week, very soon, to explain about the how are we going to work with the simulator, which is very important. So for now, you just have to complete all the activities of this guide. Let me see, just to make sure that you're doing what you really need to do. in this in this course you have, for example, but I think that I've seen your names in the form, so I think that you're already done everything, but you need to do the infography from the simulator, which most of you have already done it, uh, to make a comment to any of your friends. Please do it on the forum. um, I'm going to tell you the truth. For me, sometimes you just do it because you have to do it. But when we go to the rubric, that's an element of marking. So just do it. Just comment any of your of your classmates because you need to get those points. And work with your team, with your group, please. Work the digital report about the case study, which is Bimbo. And of course, be careful with the APA regulations for the document. Those are like the things that you have to do. The individual activity is the product, and most of you have shared the access to the simulator, the infography, and please don't forget the comment to comment one of your classmates in the forum, please, because the forum is going to close this Saturday. So if you have some troubles uploading the final report, you can send it by email. But the participation on the forum is very important to do it at last on Saturday. Please, if you haven't commented any of your classmates, do it. And please talk to your classmates and tell them how important it is to make that comment. It's a simple comment. It's just read what your classmates have done and just comment. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I agree with it. With this, the infographic is really well done. Yes, you have this, you have that. It's really short that what you have to do, but please do it because you need those points. And the collaborative activity is about the Bimbo case, which most of the people have already done the reading and identify the different answers for the points that you have to do. And just join all your ideas and write down the report and upload it on the evaluation space. Well, do you have any questions, Marisol? Well, I hope that you're hearing and that you get most of the information that I was giving you, which is very important in the process of the international negotiation and the intercultural negotiation. So I hope that you really understand. I'm going to leave you the recording so you can check that after and read the transcripts to make it clear if you don't understand that easy the English. But it is important for you also to learn English, to practice English. I know that sometimes when we work and we study, it's not easy for us to have that experience of practicing. But what I've seen is that some people learn just listening to music and trying to understand what the lyrics said, watching television in the original version, and that helps a lot with the listening and understanding the words. So thank you very much for your time. I know that most of you are working and don't have much time, and I hope that you're going well with the course. Anything that you need, you can contact me through Teams, and just let me know if you have any trouble. If there are things that you don't understand, if some things are difficult. So I try to speak a bit clear, and that's why I think the transcripts are very important for you. We just have to practice. If we're learning a language, we just need to practice somehow. Thank you very much and have a good night. And I hope that you really enjoy and understood what I was saying. Good night.